You wake up and it begins. The screen, the scroll, the feed, the noise. You tell yourself you're choosing. But are you? Are you actually choosing what you see, what you think, what you feel? Or are you just consuming what was prepared for you? Martin Heidegger warned us, everywhere we remain unfree and chained to technology, whether we passionately affirm or deny it. That's the trap. Even your resistance has been absorbed. Even your rebellion has been digitized. You think you're in control because you can swipe, click, post, but you're not choosing. You're being chosen. You are not in the machine. You're part of it. This isn't about screen time. This isn't about turning off notifications. This is about your being, your essence, and how it's being hollowed out by a world that has replaced depth with data. You used to have silence. Now you have endless sound. You used to have boredom. Now you have infinite novelty. You used to have reflection. Now you have reaction. You are being pulled away from yourself, pixel by pixel, feed by feed, notification by notification. And you don't even notice, because it's normal. Heidegger called this the technological framing of existence. Gestell, not technology as tools, but technology as the lens through which we now see the world. You don't just use your phone, you see through it, you filter life through it. You define value by what it shows you. Attention has become currency. And you've become content. Your thoughts, packaged, your opinions, optimized, your relationships, quantified. You are no longer experiencing life. You are being measured by it. But here's what no one tells you. You are not exhausted. Because you're doing too much, you're exhausted. Because you're never truly present. You never arrive. Because every moment is a gateway to another distraction, another link, another update, another shot of stimulation with no nutritional value. And like any addiction, it starts with pleasure and ends with emptiness. Heidegger warned that when the world is revealed only as a resource, when everything becomes something to be used, viewed, shared, we stop seeing it as real. A tree becomes timber. A friend becomes a follower. A moment becomes a post. And the soul, it becomes an algorithm. You're not losing yourself by accident. You're being trained to react, not reflect, to consume, not contemplate, to crave stimulation and avoid stillness at all costs, because stillness is where truth begins. And this system is allergic to truth. It wants you busy, number clicking. It wants your attention fragmented, because a fragmented person is easier to control. You think scrolling is harmless, but every scroll is a spiritual transaction. You're trading presence for distraction, consciousness for consumption. And it feels good for a moment, but the cost is yourself. Heidegger didn't fear machines. He feared a world where man becomes one, where thinking is replaced by programming, where being is replaced by utility, where meaning is replaced by metrics. And we are living in it. You feel the ache, the restlessness, the shallow fatigue, the inability to sit alone in silence without needing to check something. That's not boredom. That's withdrawal. You're not bored. You're disconnected from yourself. And the part of you that remembers stillness is trying to wake up, but it's buried under a mountain of noise, 100 tabs, 1,000 reels, 1,000,000 moments you don't remember, because you were never really in them. You're afraid to stop, because stopping means feeling. Stopping means seeing how far you've drifted. But that's where it starts. Not with a grand escape, not with deleting everything, but with noticing, with remembering what it feels like to just be, to sit without input, to walk without headphones, to eat without a screen, to breathe without distraction, and let the silence begin to hurt. Because it will hurt at first. It will feel empty, lonely, pointless. That's how deep the addiction goes. But if you stay in the silence, past the boredom, past the itch, you'll hear something else, a voice you forgot you had, your own, not the voice trained by the algorithm, not the one mimicking influencers, not the one curating your brand, but the voice that speaks, only in stillness, the one that never scrolls, never trends, never performs, the one that simply is. You are no longer living. You are being watched living. And slowly, you adjust your life to the camera that's always on, even when no one is watching. Debord called it the society of the spectacle, a world where reality has been replaced by representation, where people don't seek to experience life, they seek to display it, where being is replaced by appearing. Every meal becomes content, every thought becomes a tweet, every moment is filtered, edited, posted, compared, and if it's not shared, did it even happen? Debord warned us, the spectacle is not a collection of images, but a social relation among people, mediated by images. In other words, we no longer interact with each other. We interact with projections, your worth, measured in likes, your success, reflected in metrics, your identity, packaged for the feed. And the tragedy is, you know it's not real, but you play along. Because to step out of the game feels like disappearing. So you perform, you brand yourself, you self-monitor, you curate your own personality for the digital stage. Debord saw it long before Instagram, before TikTok, before the algorithm. He saw a world where spectacle would consume substance, where the performance would replace the person. And now it's here. You don't ask, who am I? You ask, how do I look being who I think I'm supposed to be? The mirror has been replaced by the screen, and the self has been replaced by the profile. You scroll through lives that seem perfect and wonder why yours feels numb, but they're not living either. They're just performing better. Everyone's feeding the spectacle, and everyone's starving. Debord said that the spectacle is not a distraction from real life. It becomes the definition of life. You don't want the experience. You want the picture of the experience. You want the memory dash, but prepackaged for applause. And applause, it's addictive. It makes you forget you ever wanted depth. This is not vanity, it's displacement. Your longing for connection, for meaning, for intimacy is hijacked and redirected toward presentation. And now you are stuck maintaining an identity that you no longer recognize. You're famous to people who don't know you and invisible to yourself. This is what Debord meant. In the spectacle, reality is not absent. It is replaced. And the more you feed the image, the more your actual life drains into silence. Even your pain becomes performance. You post about your mental health for visibility, for validation, or for branding. But what happens when you start shaping your identity around how it appears to feel rather than how it really feels? What happens when even your suffering must look aesthetic? To be believed, we are being devoured by the image of ourselves. We stare into the reflection and forget the body behind the mirror. We speak in slogans. We relate in algorithms. We live in fragments and call it authenticity. But this is the truth. The spectacle does not feed you. It feeds on you. It uses your attention, your insecurity, your longing for meaning. And in exchange, it gives you noise, content, but no connection, performance, but no power. And still, you keep going. Because to step away feels like vanishing, and your greatest fear is not death. It's irrelevance. But here's the paradox. The more you chase relevance, in the spectacle, the less real you become. The more you seek attention, the more hollow you feel after you get it. Because what you really want is not to be seen, but to be known. And that can't happen in performance. Debord never offered hope. He offered a mirror, a way to see what had become invisible. And now it's your turn to look, not at the screen, but through it, to ask, who am I when I'm no longer performing? And more importantly, who do I become when I stop living? For the feed? You think you're free, because you can post anything, say anything, share everything. But Byung-Chul Han would tell you, that's not freedom. That's self-surveillance. That's control. Disguised as transparency, that's burnout by design. In the Burnout Society, Han writes, freedom today means being free to exploit oneself, which is more efficient than exploitation by others. You're not being oppressed. You're being activated by likes, by urgency, by notifications, by expectations. And the worst part, you do it to yourself. You think you're expressing, you're exposing. You think you're sharing, you're selling. You've become your own product. And your freedom is actually a hyper-efficient mechanism of emotional depletion. You check your phone because you might miss something. But you never ask, what exactly am I expecting to find? Validation, relief, meaning, numbered just stimulation. Because stillness is now uncomfortable. And this discomfort was engineered. Byung-Chul Han argues that today's power doesn't come from force. It comes from voluntary self-exposure. We believe we must be available, visible, responsive. So we shatter our attention into 1,000 fragments and call it engagement. And here's the trap. You are now your own manager, your own motivator, your own critic, your own brand. You don't need external oppression. You've internalized it. You wake up and pressure yourself to do more, be more, share more. Not because someone is watching you, but because someone might. You're tired. But rest feels like laziness. You're overwhelmed. But boundaries feel selfish. You are running on your own command, and you don't even know where you're going. That is the new burnout. Not collapse from labor, but exhaustion from exposure. Not forced obedience, but voluntary overavailability. You never log off because your identity depends on being seen, and that dependency is precisely what keeps you obedient. Byung-Chul Han calls this the Achievement Society. Not do what you're told, but be your best self always. Be authentic, be successful, be inspiring, be shareable, be everything to everyone at all times. And if you fail, it's your fault, because now you're both master and slave. And the result, you collapse, not from oppression, but from hyper-performance. You burn out, not because someone worked you to death, but because you worked yourself into invisibility. And all along, they told you it was freedom. You're not free. When you feel guilty for resting, you're not free. When every quiet moment feels like wasted potential, you're not free. When your peace has to be documented to feel real. Han's critique is sharp. In the name of openness, we have lost depth. In the name of speed, we have lost meaning. In the name of sharing, we have lost selfhood. Because when everything is seen, nothing is sacred. Privacy is not about hiding. It's about being. It's about having a space within yourself that no one can comment on, react to, or monetize. A space where you think without having to post, feel without having to explain, live without having to appear alive. But that space is shrinking, not because someone took it, but because you gave it away, voluntarily, gratefully, addictively. So now, you're tired, not physically, but existentially, because no amount of scrolling has brought you home, no amount of sharing has brought you peace, and no amount of visibility has made you feel seen. The only way back is through refusal. Refuse to be always available. Refuse to be easily categorized. Refuse to be understood too quickly. Because mystery is the first act of reclaiming yourself. Be less clear. Be less reachable. Be less shareable. Start saying no without explanation. Start logging off without apology. Not because you're better, but because you're tired of being extracted. You don't owe your soul to every platform. You don't owe your energy to every input. You don't owe your truth to every audience. You owe yourself space. You owe yourself invisibility. Because in a world that trains you to be seen, your power is in choosing when not to be. Silence used to be normal. Now it feels like rebellion. Because we've been trained to fill every gap with sound, with scrolling, with stimulation. So when we stop, really stop, something strange happens. We feel exposed. The silence confronts us, not with emptiness, but with everything we've avoided. The truth, the longing, the questions, the discomfort. But that discomfort is not your enemy. It's your gateway. Heidegger said, "Only where there is stillness can the essential truly show itself." You don't find yourself in the noise. You lose yourself there. You find yourself in the silence. But to get there, you must pass through withdrawal, the restlessness, the urge to check something, the twitch of boredom, the temptation to escape. All of it is part of the detox, because your nervous system has been rewired by distraction, and healing requires discomfort. You don't need a digital fast. You need a reorientation of being, not a break from your phone, a break from the version of you that only knows how to exist through feedback. The real act of resistance today is not yelling louder, it's logging off. Not because you're angry, but because you've remembered. You don't need to be seen. To exist, you don't need to be online. To be whole, you don't need to be updated. To be evolving, silence is not absence, it is presence without permission. It is the return to something more ancient than identity, something deeper than content, something truer than performance. The ones who find peace now are not the ones who win the algorithm. They're the ones who leave it, not in anger, but in sovereignty. They walk into the forest. They light a candle in the dark. They sit in a room and remember how to breathe without checking anything. And in that moment, something returns. Not your productivity, not your dopamine, not your brand, yourself. Raw, unoptimized, unfiltered, real. You don't need another app. You need fewer notifications. You don't need more input. You need fewer portals. You don't need to be reachable. You need to be rooted. Start here. Turn off your phone for an hour, then 2 dash, then a day. Don't announce it. Don't explain it. Don't post about it. Just do it and feel what returns. Walk without music. Eat without a screen. Read without interruption. Think without checking. And most importantly, feel without sharing. Because not every emotion needs to be known. Some things grow best in the dark. You are not a brand. You are not a product. You are not a feed. You are a being, a breath, a mystery. And that mystery doesn't need to be decoded. It needs to be protected. In a world that is addicted to attention, your greatest act of power is to become invisible by choice, to reclaim your inner world from the market of noise, to build a sanctuary where no one watches, but everything lives. This is not nostalgia. This is resistance. This is not regression. This is recovery, a return to silence. Not because silence is empty, but because silence is sacred. And what is sacred doesn't shout, it simply is. Share this video with someone who's been trapped in the noise and is finally ready to breathe again. Comment below. I choose silence over stimulation. Let that be your quiet beginning. And remember, you don't need to escape the machine by running. You escape it by pausing, by unplugging, by remembering, by walking away. Not to disappear, but to become yourself again. The journey continues in the next video.